Kamala Harris has conceded the election to Donald Trump after running a short but historic but ultimately unsuccessful presidential campaign.
And many Americans might now be wondering if the vice president had become the Democratic presidential nominee sooner, could the election have had a different result? Let's bring in our political panel. Maura Gillespie previously served as an advisor to Speaker John Boehner and Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Chuck Rocha worked on Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaigns. I feel like we're asking both of you to look into your magic crystal balls of hypotheticals. But OK, Chuck, let's talk about this. People are blaming President Biden for not stepping down sooner. Democrats as a whole for not realizing how dissatisfied the electorate was. Do you agree with those sentiments? Do you see more factors?
There's lots to blame when you lose an election. I'm going to say it was too dang hot here in New York and other places, and folks didn't want to get out in the heat to vote. You'll find any excuse when you lose. The goal of this whole thing, though, is to actually do some deep soul searching for Democrats. I mean, on a serious note, like last night, we lost this election, and we didn't lose it by a little and underperformed in every county. That means we should step back, look at it, and realize what we did wrong, learn from it. And now when he has to govern and Republicans in the Senate, maybe in the House have to govern, we have to now be able to do a real contrast and get the American people to see what's the difference between Democrats and Republicans.
I mean, how about the fact that viewers last night were watching in real time a combination of, on the big boards across every network, the improvement and better numbers from Biden in 2020, combined with the fact that it was his unwillingness to step aside that was causing Kamala Harris's numbers to be lower than those. So I'm fascinated by the idea, Maura, that that's a big part of the story here, the lack of time, the lack of a primary process for Kamala Harris. Do you think any part of this is simple and related to the lack of time?
I do think that there's something to be said about the fact that it wasn't through a democratic process that she became the nominee. But again, Joe Biden had said that he was going to be a one-term president and then reneged on that promise by staying in. And I do think that a lot of people saw that as arrogance. And I don't mean to name call or anything like that, but that's what that was to me. That's just someone who didn't want to step aside from being in the power. And that's also an inner circle that kept the circle too close and wasn't willing to tell people what was really going on. And then you left the Harris team essentially on an island by themselves trying to scramble at the last minute. And so I don't think that they had, really thought through what that would mean. And again, when the majority of the country, as Chuck pointed out, felt like the country was going in the wrong direction, less than 30% thought it was going fine, that says something. And you really can't, it's almost an insurmountable thing to overcome.
And hindsight being 2020, however, the period of time, Chuck, where we knew President Biden was going to step aside, and then we knew it seemed like Kamala Harris was going to be the Democratic nominee to replace him, that was about 5 minutes. Should the Democrats have taken more time to evaluate their options?
It's a hypothetical that I've thought about. I've run a presidential campaign. It is not easy to build a name ID and let the American people all know what you're going to do. She raised $1 billion with a B over that time period, and she inundated the airways, but it still was not enough to distinguish herself from being different than Joe Biden. That's why she lost last night, because the American people didn't see her as an agent of change. They saw, even though it's changing chaos, in my opinion, they did see Donald Trump as something that was different and tied her back to the old administration. So 100 days was not enough.
Maura, I want to show something to you. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky posted on social media saying that he had a, quote, excellent call with Donald Trump, congratulated him on his historic landslide victory, also said that they, quote, agreed to maintain, hold on one second, I just lost my place, agreed to maintain close dialogue and advance our cooperation. Of course, people in Ukraine, people in other areas of the world have been watching this so closely. How do you see that conflict, potential other conflicts in the world unfolding now with a new leader in the White House? I
think there's a lot of concern, and rightfully so. We talked, about how we as Americans have been largely afraid of what outcome would come last night. Whether you were on the left or the right, people were afraid of what was going to happen. But around the world, people were also afraid of what was going to happen, largely because of the unknown. I think in a lot of ways, Donald Trump has proven to be very unpredictable. And when it comes to our foreign policy, that's hard to plan for other countries to figure out where we're going to go next and where Donald Trump may decide to throw his support or not. And I think that now we're seeing how much power he may really have. And it's going to be up to those in the Senate and those in the House to push back in areas where they can.
Chuck, 65%, according to exit polls, 65% of voters believe abortion should be legal, but only 14% of them labeled it their most important issue. Democrats going into this election, and correct me if I'm wrong, believed this was a winning issue for them. Why did it not turn out to be?
I don't know why it didn't turn out to be, but I can tell you we talked about it a lot. I worked in over 20 congressional races from New York to California, and I made a lot of ads about it because the polling told us in those races that this was the most motivational factor for a group of people, mainly women in the suburbs, that really cared about this issue up and beyond. And let's be clear, they should have. They lost a basic right to their own bodies, but we should have done that and pivoted to talk about the economy, the price of gas and groceries at the same time of talking about that issue, in my opinion.
I mean, she said that she was doing it. She said they could walk, chew gum and walk at the same time. And in multiple speeches, again, in a very short amount of time campaigning,
Right.
She would talk about a new way forward. She would talk about a woman's right to her own body and getting the government out of her body. And she would talk about reducing the price of groceries. I mean, was it the policies? And either of you can weigh in on this. It was, building new housing. It was price gouging. Are those not messages that resonate?
When you get messages coming at you from a fire hydrant all at once in 99 days with $1 billion behind it, you need a moment to be a little bit, not that she's not credible. Even Donald Trump, who is crazy in my opinion, people thought he was an agent of change and thought that it was, even though he may break some things, they knew who he was and folks didn't really know exactly everything about her.
And you also really can't point to something to say, okay, she knows how to do this because of X, Y, Z. When you're currently in the administration, you're currently the vice president of an administration where, again, 70% of the country doesn't feel like things are going in the right way. And so to talk about those issues and what you would do then, the argument would constantly go back to, okay, then why haven't you done it? And why haven't you urged Biden to do it? And why isn't there a better path forward now?
Let's talk about immigration. That was the most important issue to 11% of voters. That seems like a small number to me. I mean, is it all, again, comes down to the economy, stupid? I mean, if that was such a message that Trump harped on at rallies, closing the border, saying that borders were wildly open, is that not strong enough as, again, the kitchen table issues that we've been talking about?
Let's talk about strategy. There's a strategy behind that 11%. In all those congressional races, while I was running ads around abortion, Republicans were running ads about immigration in districts where there were no Latinos because they needed a way to offset what we were saying about abortion with these white women who vote at high rates by saying and scaring them into saying, these folks are coming, it's scary. Crime, punishment, we got to make sure, because they needed to get percentages of them to move their way. And guess what? The numbers, let's not say that white women voted with them, so they got them to move that way.
And also, one of the things that the Trump campaign focused on doing was combining the issues of immigration and the border with the economy. Famously, the Trump campaign and Trump, when he was campaigning, said, they're taking black jobs. That was a line that it seems may have resonated with some black voters. The rest of us were sort of confused by it. The direct language of Trump, the idea that the people who voted for him, Maura, know exactly how he feels about every issue. How different was that feeling for Trump voters than it was for people who were considering voting for Kamala Harris and wondering maybe where she stood on issues?
He spoke to a base of his voters that he knew would get them not only ginned up to support him, but maybe also convince other people to see the fear. And, talking about fear, that's a really motivating factor. And especially when you think about the livelihoods of your family, which he also talked about what was going to be infiltrating people's schools. That's how he used the word infiltrating. He used that kind of language to scare women into wanting to do anything and everything to protect their families. And that combines several issues all in one when you feel as though your livelihood or your family is at risk.
There's a reason why the House is performing a little bit better, in my opinion. In all of these congressional races where I was working at, we never took on Trump. We never talked about Trump. We were talking about policy solutions, about where we differed with Republicans. And you see the House candidates last night doing a little better.
I want to ask you, both of you, do you feel that policy sort of outweighed the idea of character and the highness of the office? You're laughing. A lot of people that we were talking to on camera were saying, would I let him babysit my kids? No. Would I invite him to a dinner party? No. But he shows proven outcomes.
Look, I'm laughing because when you get in these focus groups with these voters, like Donald Trump ain't got no policy book. He's got a red hat that says he's going to make America great again, which, as a strategist, is brilliant branding. And I wish I would have thought of it. We'd have had a blue hat saying, we're better. No. Whatever it is, it worked because it was simple. People go like, yes, change, make America great, whatever that means. Remember when he said he had a concept of a plan? And that even worked. Like, this is, America don't need the abs. They just need somebody who feels like they're fighting for them. And that's the argument that I feel like we lost.
Yeah, and I think largely Republicans are viewed to be stronger on the economy and safety and security. And so when you're faced with the choice, you're going to go with what you think is going to be the change that is stronger on that issue area.
Maura Gillespie and Chuck Rocha, thank you both so much.